for being with me for the last 2 hours. Let's go to Washington. The Lead with Jake Tapper starts right now.
Smock 'em if you got 'em. The Lead starts right now. Prosecutors tie President Trump to federal crimes for the very first time, as a key lawmaker says there's a serious chance the president could end up in the big house if he loses the White House. Also, as the legal trouble piles up in front of this president, there are new questions about who will run the West Wing after President Trump shows General Kelly the door, and no one else seems to necessarily want the job. Plus, I can't breathe, a Washington Post journalist's final words as he's butchered at the hands of the Saudi regime. And a new report claims the president's son-in-law was cushy with the crown prince even after the murder. Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We begin with our politics lead. President Trump, under increasing pressure, is continuing to try and discredit the federal law enforcement investigation into how Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election and whether the president obstructed that investigation. Today, again, on Twitter, the president called special counsel Robert Mueller's probe a witch hunt. He did it in all caps, so you know he really means it. The president has been trying to spin the newly released memos by Mueller and federal prosecutors by falsely claiming this all, quote, totally clears the president, unquote. The truth is the exact opposite. Mueller and prosecutors seem to be providing us with clues as to where this all might be headed, with key information about individual one, better known as President Donald J. Trump. Let's start with the Russia probe. We've now learned that the Trump Tower Moscow project, the one that the president and his team lied about throughout 2016, is considered by Mueller directly relevant to the Russia investigation. Mueller's sentencing memo about former Trump fixer Michael Cohen reads, quote, the fact that Cohen continued to work on the project and discuss it with individual one, Donald Trump, well into the campaign was material to the ongoing congressional and special counsel investigations, particularly because it occurred at a time of sustained efforts by the Russian government to interfere with the U.S. presidential election, unquote. Mueller decried Cohen's, quote, false statements that obscured the fact that the Moscow project was a lucrative business opportunity, hundreds of millions of dollars, he estimates, that sought and likely required the assistance of the Russian government. Now, that's interesting because you know who else made false statements to the public about the Moscow project?
I have no dealings with Russia. I have no deals in Russia. I have no deals that could happen in Russia because we've stayed away.
Which brings us to Mueller's second clue. In these documents, Mueller draws a line and asserts that false statements made to the public about Russia could potentially be seen as obstruction of justice, an attempt to limit the investigation, saying when Cohen lied about the Moscow project, quote, Cohen deliberately shifted the timeline of what occurred in the hopes of limiting the investigation into possible Russian interference into the 2016 U.S. presidential election. So those are two warnings for President Trump and his attorneys. A third warning came from the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. For the very first time, President Trump was directly implicated by prosecutors in federal crimes. Acting U.S. Attorney Rob Khuzami all but naming the president an unindicted co-conspirator in two campaign finance felonies in an effort to influence the 2016 presidential election. Two hush money payments to two women alleging affairs with the president in which Cohen, quote, acted in coordination with and at the direction of individual one, a.k.a. President Trump. The president today called the payments a, quote, simple private transaction, but in fact, prosecutors describe transactions that were complicated, illegal schemes involving a magazine editor, the purchase of life rights, two different shell corporations, false invoices, and non-disclosure agreements, which, as prosecutors put it, quote, all of which deceived the voting public. So, totally clears the president? The only image that seems clear to us is the potential constitutional crisis towards which we all seem to be heading. CNN's Jessica Schneider joins me now. And Jessica, it is hard to see how the Southern District of New York implicating the president in the commission of two felonies clears him in any sense of the words.
Yeah, Jake, this filing far from clears the president. And in fact, this criminal allegation out of New York seems to have given the green light to key members of Congress to also look into whether the president's alleged involvement in campaign finance violations, whether it's also an impeachable offense. For the first time, prosecutors are implicating the president in a crime, accusing then-candidate Donald Trump of directing illegal campaign contributions to silence 2 women who claimed affairs with Trump, all in an effort to influence the 2016 election. Prosecutors in New York telling the judge, as Cohen himself has now admitted, with respect to both payments, he acted in coordination with and at the direction of Individual 1.
The next president of the United States.
Individual 1 referring to President Trump, though he's not directly named in the filing. And with the latest revelation, the incoming chair of the House Judiciary Committee telling Jake on State of the Union the president's conduct pre-election could set the stage for impeachment.
Well, I think what these indictments and filings show is that the president was at the center of a massive fraud, several massive frauds against the American people. Certainly they'd be impeachable offenses. Whether they are important enough to justify an impeachment is a different question.
Now that the president's actions are fully detailed in criminal filings, the president is lashing out on Twitter, calling the payouts a simple private transaction, saying Cohen just trying to get his sentence reduced, witch hunt. The president once said he knew nothing about the payouts to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal to secure their silence about alleged affairs.
Do you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels?
But audio obtained from September 2016 later showed Trump was fully involved.
I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with funding. Yes. And it's all the stuff.
The president's business and his family members may also be implicated in the future. New York federal prosecutors have continued to investigate the Trump Organization based on information in the charges against Cohen, CNN has reported. In their filing, federal prosecutors in New York said that Cohen met with prosecutors to discuss the participation of others in the campaign finance crimes. The New York Times reports that New York prosecutors have also examined the statute of limitations on campaign finance violations and believe that charges could possibly be brought against the president if he is not reelected to a second term. But the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, says the filings from Friday showed no evidence implicating the president, and also that those payments to the 2 women weren't campaign contributions anyway. And Jake, as for Michael Cohen, he'll be sentenced on Wednesday, and prosecutors have recommended 4 to 5 years in prison. But of course, ultimately, it's up to the judge.
That's right. Southern District of New York saying that he has not been cooperative. Mueller saying he has. Kind of a split decision there. Thank you so much, Jessica Schneider. So President Trump's reaction to this has been his typical style. He first said he was totally cleared, which he hasn't been. This morning he says there's no smocking gun. That's an interesting word choice. And that the payments were a simple private transaction. Now, given that we understand that his messaging appeals to his base, I want to know, you as a communications expert, whether you think this is good messaging for what is to come for President Trump.
Well, no. Because his base is a certain percentage of the population, as we all know. But in order to win re-election, which is certainly front and foremost in his mind, as it should be, he needs to continue to win over independents and continue to win over people in the country who gave him a chance last time. And he's saying there's, you know, they got me off the hook here, or not they got me off the hook, but, you know.
Totally cleared me.
I'm totally cleared. That's easy to disprove. And we know there's certainly more to come. So, yes, dangerous because people can replay. Will be in campaign commercials in the future if we get to a campaign of him saying I'm off the hook when there's a lot more to come, as we know.
I guess the big question, of course, is how do Republicans in the House and Senate, how are they going to take this? Because ultimately, if there is impeachment, they're the ones that are going to have to vote. I asked Marco Rubio, a Republican senator from Florida, what he thought the repercussion should be if it is proven, it has not yet been, if it has been proven that the president directed Michael Cohen to commit felonies to influence the election. Here's Senator Rubio's response.
If someone has violated the law, the application of the law should be applied to them like it would to any other citizen in this country. And obviously, if you're in a position of great authority like the presidency, that would be the case. I don't know if it's going to reach that point or not. We have to wait and see. But my decision on that, or my position on that, will not be a political decision. It'll be the fact that we are a nation of laws, and no one in this country, no matter who you are, is above it.
What do you think?
I think he understands where Republicans are vulnerable, and so he's charting out clear ground.
I think a lot of Republicans could make the case that the president should not be impeached and thrown out of office because of a couple of payments. The problem, though, is that Michael Cohen is going to go to jail for this. So how do you say Michael Cohen should go to jail for committing crimes the president directed him to and letting Trump off the hook? That's the problem.
Yeah, because we don't know if the president directed him to do it, right? I mean, that's
the
U.S. attorney is saying it happened.
Yeah, but that's so Michael Cohen. We can run enough tape on the show to eat up the next hour. Michael Cohen is praising Donald Trump as the best guy, the most honest guy, right? So they're going to show that to a jury. They're going to say, "You're lying now, you're lying then," right?
But the jury for the
that's one thing.
president
No, listen.
is in the House.
So the second thing is, as you point out, and Gloria pointed out before earlier in the show, people are going to watch the tape. They're going to see that, and they're going to say, "You shouldn't overturn an election because of that." That's not something you're going to overturn an election based on those two payments. If it gets to be something more grandiose at someplace down the road on real Russian collusion where there's big items. I'm not saying these aren't big. Obviously, these are felonies. But Gloria earlier in the hour before this said, look, she thinks that a lot of this is baked in. A lot of it was baked in the election.
So you know what's interesting about that is that's also what I'm hearing from House Democrats. They are not running to talk.
You saw
about,
Jerry Nadler.
Yeah, they are not running towards and talking about impeachment about this.
Right.
They're keeping their powder dry, as it were.
I think they are keeping their powder dry. Look, I think Republicans talk about impeachment more than Democrats do. We certainly didn't run on it. We talked about keeping the checks and balances, having oversight on this president, and making sure we talked about real issues. Look, we're at the beginning. We're still at the beginning of this investigation. We're not at the end yet, and I think we should wait to see what Mueller eventually finds at the end. But but what you were saying, David, about Cohen and him saying we can run tapes for hours and hours, but I don't think the U.S. Attorney's Office would have just waiting or just sitting on his word only. I think they have some collaborating evidence. We'll find out. I don't think it's just Cohen's word.
Cohen was very tough. And the prosecutors made the case that this just wasn't a payment, a run-of-the-mill campaign finance violation. It was an elaborate scheme to keep information from voters that may have possibly changed the election.
But you know that he had two affairs?
Yes.
But it's fraud.
No, I'm saying so
it is defrauding the people. They're not being honest. He lied.
I don't know in the history of politics has that happened before, but I'm guessing it had.
But
right?
ultimately, the president has been implicated in a felony here.
Yes.
But we have all been numbed, including Congress.
No, I think wait and see.
Let me finish. Including Democrats in Congress to a degree. And they are making a political calculation, which is what impeachment is. Because their objective is to get Donald Trump out of office. So how do you do that? Maybe there's going to be more from Mueller to impeach him. Maybe it's the election. We don't know yet, but they're making a calculation that the public has baked this in, and they're not ready to move forward with that
And
yet.
Amanda, take a listen to the likely next chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff.
There's a very real prospect that on the day Donald Trump leaves office, the Justice Department may indict him, that he may be the first president in quite some time to face the real prospect of jail time. We have been discussing the issue of pardons that the president may offer to people or dangle in front of people. The bigger pardon question may come down the road as the next president has to determine whether to pardon Donald Trump.
Possible?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of scenarios possible, but I think what he's getting at is how do you punish a president for a crime? If he can't be indicted, if you're not going to impeach him, because I think a lot of people don't think this rises to the level of impeachment. Could I see this introduced in articles of impeachment as one case? Perhaps. But they know if they're going to try to remove the president, they're going to have something a lot stronger than this. So I think he's saying we might not go here now, but once he's out of office, then he could be prosecuted.
So in the last impeachment of a president of the United States, my former boss, right, Arlen Specter, who was then went on to be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, penned an op-ed that ran in the New York Times very prominently, was used during the impeachment, and said, don't impeach Bill Clinton. He should be tried after he leaves for office. That's the proper way to do it. And so there is precedent for that to be talked about, and Schiff's right.
Do you think he should be impeached for this, or do you follow more, maybe perhaps the Adam Schiff proposal of just wait till he's out of office and then you can go at him?
I think we should wait to see what Mueller brings forth and what the report tells us.
Yeah, but I mean on the specific Southern District of New York allegations about, assuming they're true, assuming they're proven. I'm not talking about Mueller. I'm talking about the
SDNY.
payments.
The payments. I think. Look, I think that there is a question on defrauding the American people, right before the election. We should really look into that. And if it rises to the level and there's more that comes out that leads us to impeachment, yeah, I think the House Democrats and Republicans as well should seriously think about that.
All right, we have a lot more to talk about, so everyone stick around. Not one, not two, not even 10. The number of people in Trump's world who had contact with Russians continues to grow. That's next. Plus, one of the most prestigious jobs in the White House now available. Is David Urban going to take it? Some of the top candidates seem to be saying thanks, but no thanks. Stick around to find out more.
Hey, Jen, which tie says trustworthy but also fun?
Gold down, oil up. Oil down, gold up.
This is too busy. We need to make sure people can actually use this stuff.
Which one says hours of free live streaming coverage without cable or subscription fees?
Aluminum. Aluminum.
You ready, Zach?
Well, we're ready.
Welcome to the show. Let's make finance make sense.
XL guys aren't built like everyone else. That's why DXL isn't built like any other clothing store, with sizes starting at XL, from Lacoste to Levi's, Brooks Brothers, and more. Built to fit. Built XL. DXL.
Really? Man, this is what I feel like when I wear regular shoes. Cramped and uncomfortable.
We can arrange a little upgrade.
Which is why I wear Skechers wide fit shoes. They have extra room throughout. They're like a luxury ride for my feet. Try Skechers wide fit shoes.
Ruby Tuesday's new Homestyle combos starting at $11.99. Choose from 6 all-new, creamy, hearty, savory, cheesy entrees, plus endless trips to the Garden Bar. Join us at Ruby Tuesday for new Homestyle combos starting at $11.99.
I just got my Ancestry DNA results. 74% Italian. And I found out that I'm from the big toe of that sexy Italian boot. So this holiday season, it's Ancestry DNA per tutti. Order your kit now at Ancestry.com.
We didn't dream up a new way to find the best ramen. We never thought, you know what Mars needs? A dune buggy. We didn't decide you should be able to share your home with travelers from around the world. We didn't reimagine banking. Or whatever she's about to do. But when asked if these ideas were possible, we're the only cloud with the capabilities, experience, and know-how to make them happen. AWS is how.
I just got my cashback match. Is this for real?
Yep. We match all the cashback new card members earn at the end of their first year automatically.
Whoa, I got my money.
It's hard to contain yourself, isn't it?
Uh-huh. Well, let it go. Woo.
Get a $1-for-$1 match at the end of your first year, only from Discover.
Only one OTC topical pain reliever's label claims were FDA approved. Just like prescription medicines, new Salon-Pause Patch Large, uniquely labeled to treat mild to tough or moderate pain for up to 12 hours. Salon-Pause, power without a prescription.
Having moderate to severe plaque psoriasis is not always easy. It's a long-distance journey, and you have the determination to keep going. Humira has a proven track record of being prescribed for over 10 years. Humira works inside the body to target and help block a specific source of inflammation that contributes to symptoms. Most adults taking Humira were clear or almost clear, and many saw 75% and even 90% clearance in just 4 months, and the kind of clearance that can last.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections, including tuberculosis. Serious, sometimes fatal infections and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Before treatment, get tested for TB. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Join over 250,000 patients who have chosen Humira. Ask about the #1 prescribed biologic by dermatologists. Humira and go.
Don't you get the best price booking at one of those travel sites? They tell you that, but when you book at Hilton.com, you get the price match guarantee. So if you find your room at a lower rate, Hilton is like, we're gonna match that rate and give you an extra 25% off. What would travel sites do if you found a better price? That's not my problem. It's your problem. Get out of here. Wow, really felt that performance. It's just acting. I'm really good at it. Book at Hilton.com and get the Hilton price match guarantee. If you find a lower rate, we match it and give you 25% off that stay.
Sticking with politics, at least 16. That's the number of Trump campaign officials or people in President Trump's orbit who had some form of interaction or contact with Russians during the 2016 presidential race by CNN's count. It's all part of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe into whether anyone associated with Mr. Trump may have conspired with the Russian government to impact the race. CNN's Alex Marquardt picks up the story.
They are among the biggest names in the Trump orbit. The children, the campaign chairman, the former attorney general. 16 people associated with Donald Trump who had contact with Russians during the campaign and in the White House. Among the key contacts, Donald Jr. set up a meeting with a Russian lawyer in Trump Tower.
We have Russia.
Fired National Security Advisor Michael Flynn called the Russian ambassador to discuss sanctions. And former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort lied about his contacts with a Russian connected to the intelligence services. In the months after the election, Trump and senior officials repeatedly denied any contacts took place.
There was no collusion between us and Russia. I watched the news this morning.
But tonight, there's renewed focus on the Trump team's dealings with Moscow after the special counsel's office told a court that it sees significance in Michael Cohen negotiating to build a Trump Tower in Russia while the Kremlin was meddling in the U.S. election. Mueller's team alleging the Trump Organization's project in Russia, worth hundreds of millions of dollars and continued as Trump ran for president, was a lucrative business opportunity that sought and likely required the assistance of the Russian government. Meanwhile, ahead of Paul Manafort's sentencing, the special counsel's office revealed that Manafort continued to reach out to the Trump administration after he was indicted and struck a plea deal, and then lied about it. Why he tried to contact them is unclear. For many Republicans, none of this is relevant to the president or matters.
I'm absolutely against it. I think it's a miscarriage of justice, and we should not have special prosecutors going after one person.
Others, like Senator Marco Rubio, defending Mueller against calls for him to be fired.
As I've said repeatedly, I believe that Mr. Mueller's probe should continue and move forward unimpeded. Both of those findings will be there before the American public. We'll see what it all shows when put together, and we'll move on from there and see what needs to be done.
And Jake, the former FBI Director James Comey was also asked about the possibility of firing Robert Mueller. He told the Judiciary Committee that firing Mueller would not stop the investigations, that in order to do that, he said, you'd almost have to fire everyone at the FBI and Justice Department. Jake.
All right, Alex Marquardt, thanks so much. Let's talk about this with Kim Whaley, former Associate Independent Counsel in the Whitewater investigation and a former federal prosecutor. Which of these contacts with Russians is most concerning for President Trump, if any of them?
Well, there's so many of them. It's difficult, and we're only seeing a very small slice of all the information that they know. But now we've got Manafort, we've got Cohen, we have contacts not only leading up to the campaign, we have contacts during the transition, and we have contacts since the Mueller investigation has started. So we have potential, for lack of a better word, collusion, conspiracy, problems in that regard, as well as obstruction of justice, maybe witness tampering. We just don't know because so little has come out. But the presumption would be there's a lot of evidence supporting this or even going further.
So we know Michael Cohen lied about his contacts with Russians and President Trump regarding possible Trump Tower in Moscow throughout 2016. Mueller said those lies, quote, deliberately shifted the timeline of what had occurred in the hopes of limiting the investigations into possible Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election, an issue of heightened national interest. Now, I'm a layman. I'm not a lawyer. But to me, that seems to suggest that Mueller might think that lying to the public also can be construed as obstruction of justice.
Well, certainly lying to the public could be a shot across the bow with respect to impeachment, but I think the issue there has to do with motive, right? Why is everyone lying? Well, if there was an agreement basically for a quid pro quo that I'll give you, Trump Tower, I'll give you Putin, give you a suite at the top, I'll give you maybe ease up some Russian sanctions, and in exchange, you're going to help me with the dirt on Hillary Clinton, you'll help me in other ways. So that intent question can lead to a series of potential criminal charges, not just for the individuals involved, but also potentially for the Trump organization. And if it's the latter, with respect to some crimes, it's easier to prove intent than it is with respect to an individual.
In the filing, we also learned that in November 2015, Cohen spoke with an unidentified Russian national claiming to be, quote, a trusted person in the Russian Federation, offering the campaign, quote, political synergy and synergy on a government level, even pushing for a meeting between Putin and Trump. What do you glean from that?
Yeah, I mean, that's stunning. Presumably, if it's in quotes, that comes from some other source. So my guess is these prosecutors aren't just relying on Cohen's statement. So again, this is a question of it's quid pro quo. We'll get political synergy. To me, that speaks of something that certainly is not in the interest of the American public. It's not in the interest of American democracy. And the big overhang here is the fact that As voters, we vote based on public information. There's no background checks for a presidential candidate. That the FBI doesn't do what it did for Brett Kavanaugh, for example. So if we don't know what's going on, we can't vote willingly. That's really a problem for the broader question of democracy.
All right, Kim Whaley, thank you so much. Appreciate it. With John Kelly on his way out, President Trump is looking to change the focus of the White House Chief of Staff. The new goal for one of the most powerful positions in Washington. That's next. Stay with us.
Are you ready for it? Yeah. It's like CNN gone wild. TMI. Too much.
You've had quite the career.
Yeah, I've had some pretty prestigious jobs over the years. News producer, executive transport manager, and a beverage distribution supervisor. Now I'm a director at a security software firm.
Wow, you've been at it a long time.
The thing is, I like working. What if my retirement plan is I don't want to retire?
Then let's not create a retirement plan. Let's create a plan for what's next.
I like that.
Get a plan that's right for you. TD Ameritrade.
At the Joseph A. Bank Super Tuesday sale, save up to 70% off everything. All suits on sale starting at $199. Dress shirts, $29. Plus take an extra 60% off clearance. From stitch to store, that's the bank way.
Your insurance rates skyrocket after a scratch so small you could fix it with a pen. How about using that pen to sign up for new insurance instead?
For drivers with accident forgiveness, Liberty Mutual won't raise their rates because of their first accident. Switch and you could save $782 on home and auto insurance. Call 1-888-592-3456 for a free quote today. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
It's been a difficult year for our family, children. Everything's fallen to pieces.
This Christmas, return to a world where anything is possible.
Mary. Poppins, it's time.
With one of the best movies of the year.
We're on the brink of an adventure.
Come on! 3, 2, 1, now!
You've been off filling the children's heads with nonsense. You're too focused on where you've been to pay attention to where you're going.
You've forgotten what it's like to be a child.
When the world turns upside down, turn right along with it.
Disney's Mary Poppins Returns. Rated PG. Everywhere December 19th.
Hey guys, if you're experiencing erectile dysfunction, you can now get treated anywhere. Like here, 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 even here. Okay, maybe not there. That's why we built Roman. So it's easy to get ED meds prescribed online, delivered to your door. Just visit GetRoman.com, chat with a U.S. licensed physician, and you'll get FDA-approved medication delivered in discreet packaging. Roman, let's take care of it. Get your first month free at GetRoman.com/TV.
Your brain changes as you get older, but Prevagen helps your brain with an ingredient originally discovered in jellyfish. In clinical trials, Prevagen has been shown to improve short-term memory. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
Go from so gritty to so pretty. TheraTear's clinically proven electrolyte formula corrects the salt imbalance that can cause dry eye, so your eyes will be happy, healthier TheraTear's eyes. And for extraordinary relief, try new TheraTear's Extra.
I always felt that my comedy was just to make things be all right.
It's the story of my life.
This
is my body proof.
Proof of less joint pain.
And clearer skin.
Proof that I can fight psoriatic arthritis.
with Humira.
Humira targets and blocks a specific source of inflammation that contributes to both joint and skin symptoms. It's proven to help relieve pain, stop further irreversible joint damage, and clear skin in many adults. Humira is the #1 prescribed biologic for psoriatic arthritis.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections. Serious and sometimes fatal infections, including tuberculosis and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Ask your rheumatologist about Humira.
Go to mypsaproof.com to see proof in action.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Now we have some breaking news for you in the politics lead. A new name is emerging as a top contender to replace John Kelly as White House Chief of Staff. A source close to the White House is telling CNN that former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is now considered a strong option, as others seem to be rushing to take their names out of the running, possibly unwilling to take on the firestorms that are waiting. Let's go to CNN's Caitlin Collins at the White House. And Caitlin, the job of White House Chief of Staff used to elevate people, but with Reince Priebus and John Kelly, arguably, it actually diminished their reputations.
And you better bet that's a big factor being considered by those people whose names are now being floated. Jake, what's complicating this search is that it essentially got started 24 hours ago because President Trump did not think Nick Ayers was going to decline this job, and there was no backup. Now old names are being floated, and essentially it is a free-for-all in Washington for who's going to be the next Chief of Staff.
President Trump scrambling tonight as the hasty search for his next Chief of Staff continues, with no clear replacement in sight.
John Kelly will be leaving at the end of the year.
Who will replace John Kelly is now an open question after the top contender, Vice President Mike Pence's Chief of Staff, Nick Ayers, turned the president down because they couldn't agree on timing. Trump wanted a 2-year commitment, but Ayers only wanted to run the West Wing on a temporary basis.
It might be on an interim basis. I'll be announcing that over the next day or two.
Trump writing on Twitter that he's in the process of interviewing some really great people and will make a decision soon, but denying he was close to making a deal with Ayers, even though sources say they'd already drafted a statement announcing his hiring before the negotiations fell apart. Despite having no obvious candidate in mind, Trump already has a to-do list for his next Chief of Staff, including shifting the West Wing's priorities away from legislation and policy to politics, according to sources who added that the president wanted Ayers to conduct a full review of West Wing operations, including staffing, because he's growing increasingly anxious about his political future, telling aides he needs all the help he can get before January, when newly empowered House Democrats take over.
Are you at all concerned about what happens next with the White House without John Kelly?
Well, it depends who they put in as a replacement.
The job hunt now underway, and familiar names are resurfacing, including Congressman Mark Meadows, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney, and U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer. But not all of those being floated sound like they're up to the daunting task.
Is that a job you want?
The president has given me what is a very difficult job. I'm very, very happy doing it.
As Trump searches for his third Chief of Staff in under 2 years, his critics are reminding him of this tweet from 2012, when he criticized President Barack Obama for having 3 Chiefs of Staff in less than 3 years.
Now, Jake, John Kelly attended a holiday party here at the White House last night. He is at work today, but there are only 3 weeks left for President Trump to find a replacement for him, and White House aides are very aware that time is ticking. Jake?
All right, Caitlin Collins, thanks so much. Now, since the Kelly news dropped, we now have sources saying that former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is in the running to replace Kelly. Republican Congressman Mark Meadows said publicly that serving as Chief of Staff would be an incredible honor, but a source told CNN that he's telling associates he's, quote, absolutely not interested. Steve Mnuchin says he can best serve in his current role as Treasury Secretary, according to a source. This is not the first time Mick Mulvaney's name has come up. A source told CNN the White House Budget Director is not interested, happy where he is. It seems that you can't sell a list of insiders on this job.
Yeah, I mean, this is a job, to state the obvious, that typically people really want this job. It is a resume maker, of course. And this is now a time where leaving the White House in a high-profile position as a cabinet member, as a senior White House official, is actually diminishing of your role, diminishing of your effectiveness. I was talking to a former colleague earlier today about this, who actually made an interesting point, which is it's actually tough for Trump because people thought that Nick Ayers was going to be the guy for months since we've been talking about Kelly's departure.
The vice president's chief of staff.
Yes, Nick Ayers, exactly. The vice president's chief of staff, that was assumed and then all of a sudden dropped. And you never want, as chaotic as this White House is, this is such an important role that you're projecting chaos and maybe it wasn't even intentionally that way. So we don't know the backstory. Maybe David does.
Well, David, I want to hear the backstory, but I know you don't think that the names we put up there of Meadows and Mulvaney and Mnuchin
I
are
do.
likely.
I think some of them, yeah.
But I want to ask you about these wild card names. MSNBC reports that Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker is in the running, along with New York Yankees President Randy Levine. And Fox News, Brian Kilmeade suggested former Trump campaign deputy campaign manager David Bossie should take the spot. Are those possible actual contenders?
Look, I think they're all actual contenders. I think, you have to question Mick Mulvaney was a contender for a really long time, and query whether he took his name out because he thought, as Jen points out, that Nick Ayers had it locked up and just wanted to take his name out of the running. I think quite the opposite. I don't think the president's scrambling. I think the president does have some pretty solid choices. I do think Matt Whitaker is a candidate. I think that Dave Bossie's a candidate. I think there are, Chris Christie's a candidate. I think there are some really good folks out there. President has to pick. It is a job that requires you have to have chemistry with the president, and that's something that you actually, as Jen knows, right? President Obama had 5 different chiefs of staff, and one of the big jobs is you have to have policy chops, and you have to have Hill smarts and political smarts, and then you have to get along with your boss.
But I think, David, this is unique in that any chief of staff who's being considered or potential chief of staff is looking at this scenario, and there's the internal challenge of Donald Trump giving everyone a honeymoon where they like them for about 2 months, and then he cuts them off at the knees, as he's done for the last 2. And then externally, you have this closing circle around the Russia investigation, around Trump's orbit. So you're walking into this scenario that could be completely chaotic.
Yeah.
I do think David Bossie would be a good pick. He's very well known among the conservative movement. He fought the Supreme Court case, Citizens United.
Worked on the Hill for a long time.
Won there, so he's well liked. He has run an organization. But I've got to say, just seeing Chris Christie's name in contention, I don't think they'll actually go with it. It's got to be total vindication for Chris Christie because, as you remember, he headed up the transition team. He has said many times in public forums, if Trump had taken his advice, especially about Michael Flynn, he could have prevented many of the problems in that White House. And he has been widely reported, butted heads with Jared Kushner about many of the hirings. And so I think Chris Christie,
Kushner's dad in jail.
Right.
Yeah.
So they have a long, deep history, but I do think Chris Christie would be happy to see his name in the headlines today.
The Jared Kushner Ivanka Trump thing is interesting because ultimately it seems as though whether it's Priebus or John Kelly, as well, not to mention plenty of others who have left the White House, if you are not on Jared and Ivanka's good side, then you are on the outside.
It's so true. I mean, they are winning the game, right, of that who is controlling the White House. It certainly seems to be Jared and Ivanka. I mean, that's
here's
the point.
Here's a newsflash. The president's not going to fire his daughter.
Right. No, or his son-in-law. I actually think this is the easiest guessing game in town. Who's going to be the president's new chief of staff? It's going to be Donald Trump. I mean, yeah, the person, whoever he picks, they're going to get a nice corner office. They're going to get the title, but he is his own chief of staff. He makes those decisions. All we have to do is ask John Kelly and Reince Priebus. It is going to be Donald Trump who wants to have that role, and no one's going to be able to manage him.
He's the decider in chief. He's the communicator in chief, just like he said, communication.
But people have talked to you about that job before, David, and you have not taken it. I mean,
nobody's talked to me seriously.
He likes talking with me here more.
I'd rather be on fight with Jen every day.
It is a challenging job, and ultimately you have to be able to protect the president from his own worst impulses. You had a statement from Speaker Paul Ryan saying that John Kelly did do that, which makes, and brought a sense of order to the White House, which does make one wonder what would the last year and a half have looked like without John Kelly.
It certainly does. I don't think we should give John Kelly too much credit because he did kind of go with Donald Trump in some of the worst instinct moments we've seen over the last year and a half of his tenure. But it is a role that is both serving the president and serving the staff. And what is difficult about this scenario right now is, as you said, he is his own chief of staff. He's his own chief communicator. Yeah. It is hard to manage him, and it's hard to manage the staff if you can't manage the president.
But the reason they wanted to go with Nick Ayers is that they wanted somebody with political skill. Now that he's taken himself out of the running, I do think that puts David Bossie ahead because David Bossie is a hard-nosed partisan that is not afraid of fighting. And I think in this environment with impeachment on the table, that's going to be very appealing.
I just want to show this one thing because it is, as we say, there's a tweet for it. As a civilian in 2012, Trump knocked Obama on this issue. He tweeted, 3 chief of staffs, that should be chiefs of staff, but okay, moving on. 3 chief of staffs in less than 3 years of being president, part of the reason why Barack Obama can't manage to pass his agenda. Obviously, we are now heading into the 3rd year of the Trump presidency, and we were about to have the third chief of staff, 2 years. So he actually beat Obama's record there.
Obama had 5. Obama had more.
After 8 years, though.
But after 8 years, exactly. Look, I mean, Donald Trump, everything that he tweets is not true, and he, you know, there's always a tweet for everything. Well, it's just kind of ridiculous.
And
on its face.
just worth mentioning that Rahm Emanuel left to run for mayor of Chicago.
He did.
Jack Lew left to become Secretary of Treasury. It's not like they were just pushed out and they were a disaster when they were leaving. So it's a little bit different. We had one chief of staff for the last 4 years. But it's a hard job. It's arguably a much harder job now than it has probably ever been.
I'm hearing from the 2 Republicans at the table, though. You guys sound very bullish on Dave Bossie.
Listen, I like Dave Bossie, like Matt Whitaker. There are a lot of folks. Chris Christie, as everyone says, everyone's projecting. There's this chaos. The president has no one to choose from. He's got some really talented folks to choose from.
Can any of them tell President Trump, you really shouldn't do that? That's going to be bad for you.
Sure,
Put down the phone. Stop tweeting.
They could tell him that.
Who?
All 3 of those folks. Chris Christie, Whitaker, Bossie.
Doesn't matter if
is he going to listen?
Trump would listen.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
what I mean.
You can't manage that.
That's what I'm talking about.
But they have the chops. They all 3 have the chops. They're serious folks. The president listens to them. They have gravitas. But, you know, the president's going to make. The president makes the decision. Ultimately, President Obama made the decisions based on what his staff, Clinton, Bush, they all. He's the decider in chief. That's how it is.
I just hope whoever he chooses is independently wealthy to afford the legal bills that almost certainly will ensue.
All right, we're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, she cozied up to the NRA and dated a Republican political operative. Now the accused Russian spy could be released from that Virginia jail. We'll explain why. Stay with us.
Fact is, every insurance company hopes you drive safely. But Allstate helps you with DriveWise. Feedback that helps you drive safer, and that could lower your cost. Now that you know the truth, are you in good hands?
Dealing with psoriatic arthritis pain was so frustrating.
My skin, it was embarrassing.
My joints, they hurt.
The pain and swelling.
The tenderness.
The psoriasis.
I had to find something that worked on all of this.
I found Cosentyx. Now, watch me.
Real people with active psoriatic arthritis are getting real relief with Cosentyx. It's a different kind of targeted biologic. Cosentyx treats more than just the joint pain of psoriatic arthritis. It even helps stop further joint damage. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor about an infection or symptoms. If your inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen, or if you've had a vaccine or plan to. Serious allergic reactions may occur.
I got real relief.
I got clear skin and feel better.
Now, watch me.
Get real relief with Cosentyx.
Dick, I want you to be my VP.
Oh, George.
Come on, Lone Ranger needs a Tonto.
Vice has more Golden Globe nominations than any movie this year.
This is going to be fun.
Including Christian Bale, Best Actor, Amy Adams, Best Supporting Actress, Sam Rockwell, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Picture of the Year.
I'll handle energy, military, foreign policy. I like that.
This isn't something that a vice president really does.
It is now.
Vice, rated R.
If you live with diabetes, why fingerstick when you can scan? With the Freestyle Libre 14-day system, just scan the sensor with your reader or iPhone and manage your diabetes. With the Freestyle Libre 14-day system, a continuous glucose monitor, you can check your glucose levels anytime without fingersticks. Ask your doctor to write a prescription for the new Freestyle Libre 14-day system. You can do it without fingersticks. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
CNN gone wild. My heat has just kicked in big time. TMI. Too much. Oh. That is a reason to tune in.
Get a free mesothelioma book from mesobook.com.
People who have been diagnosed with mesothelioma have many questions. That's why we offer this free book.
Call toll-free at 1-800-821-8383.
on the phone.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you guys?
AT&T proudly offers wireless and TV discounts to military, veterans, first responders, and their families. Visit att.com/hero.
Get a free mesothelioma book from mesobook.com.
People who have been diagnosed with mesothelioma have many questions. That's why we offer this free book.
Call toll-free at 1-800-821-8383.
The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. Up next on CNN.
Closed captioning brought to you by mesobook.com.
We offer a free book on mesothelioma. Call for the free book and receive so much more. Call 1-800-831-3700.
We're back with our politics lead and the former director of the FBI suggesting that President Trump's tweets might constitute a crime. James Comey telling a crowd at New York City's 92nd Street Y last night that the president's repeated attacks on potential witnesses in the Russia investigation could potentially amount to witness tampering.
If I were prosecuting a case in the Southern District of New York and a prominent person started attacking my witnesses, I'd want to know, so what's going on there? And has that crossed the line from free speech, which we have to keep protected, into something else?
Let's talk about it all with our panel. Amanda, what do you think? Free speech or something else?
Here's what I'm confused about. I don't know why he's so openly talking about obstruction cases, because he's said as much, a witness in an obstruction case. It's one thing to write the book, go on the book tour, but he's just out there mixing it up, I think, too much.
Yeah,
He was on the Hill earlier this week being grilled by Republicans, so I wonder if he scheduled this to kind of cover that.
Well, he was all subpoenaed on that. He had to.
Yes, well, I know, but I wonder if he scheduled that appearance to try to clean up if he thought he did. I don't understand why he's talking so much.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Before that,
I totally agree. I think Jim Comey being political is just really bizarre right now. He's probably going to be a key witness in this investigation.
Jim Comey being political
I know,
bizarre now?
He's calling for Democrats to win. He wants Democrats to win. That you don't want to support.
Great. I want Democrats to win too. I think he needs to stay behind the scenes. He does not need to be in front of a camera right now.
Listen, Jim Comey's managed to alienate the entire political spectrum. Right? So the Democrats.
But the thing is, he's right about saying it would be better for Trump to be removed politically than for impeachment. He has a point. I'm just not sure why he's openly making it.
So here's President Trump's reaction to Comey's Friday testimony on Capitol Hill. Quote, "Leakin' James Comey must have set a record for who lied the most to Congress in one day. His Friday testimony was so untruthful. This whole deal is a rigged fraud headed up by dishonest people who would do anything so that I could not become president. They are now exposed." Of course, that would be a criminal offense, lying to Congress. I think actually Comey's the bigger issue I heard from Republicans on Capitol Hill was that he said, I do not recall or I don't remember dozens and dozens of times.
And he also had a lawyer from the government saying he couldn't answer certain things.
An FBI lawyer, yeah.
Which was frustrating to Republicans there. I mean, that tweet was like a word salad of Trump's favorite words. I don't even know what it meant. But what's interesting about what Comey has alluded to, though I agree, I think we can all agree he needs to stop being out there, is whether or not tweets and Trump's Twitter threats are constitute obstruction of justice. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but that's an interesting question. And what's also interesting about it is even though he's been threatening potential witnesses, it's not working. They're not listening to him. So he's maybe getting himself into legal trouble. I don't know. And he's not effectively preventing people from testifying
against. On the subject of Trump's tweets, I just think it's worth noting that Trump uses his Twitter account to go after Cohen, to praise Manafort. You know who he's always silent on? Mike Flynn. He doesn't say a word about Michael Flynn.
I think there have been a couple tweets, but generally praising
and
Michael
saying,
Flynn.
well, look what they're doing to this guy and like stuff like that.
No, he hasn't gone after. I mean, Michael Flynn has cooperated, saying like a canary to prosecutors, and Trump doesn't have a word to say about it.
That's true. Yeah. That's striking to me. He's sending messages through Twitter.
Oh my God. They're official statements. I mean, the White House has said that his tweets are official presidential statements.
Right.
So.
And there's no precedent for it. That's what's interesting.
That is unprecedented.
So there's another important Russia development. Accused Russian spy Maria Butina, rhymes with Putin, may have reached a plea deal with the Justice Department. She's accused of infiltrating Republican organizations and the NRA during the 2016 election to advocate for Russian interests. We should note she was charged by federal prosecutors in D.C., not by the special counsel. But sure looks like there's more evidence. It doesn't necessarily mean President Trump knew anything or whatever, but a lot of evidence that the Russians were involved in the 2016 election. Obviously, the NRA is a powerhouse.
Yeah, and what's striking about Maria Butina is that she is the first one to get Trump to go on record in a public forum about sanctions. She showed up at a conference in Las Vegas to promote gun rights and asked him in an open forum, where do you stand on this issue? And then he said, I don't think they're helpful. So she clearly was effective, but the larger role of how the Russians infiltrated these conservative organizations has not been told yet. And the NRA, curiously, they had a pretty big loss this year. They've been laying off a lot of people in their media arm. I want to hear more about that story.
It's interesting. Congressman Ted Lieu, who's on the House Judiciary Committee, tweeted this: Dear NRA, now I know why you refused to answer the letter I wrote with other members of Congress in March about Russian efforts to influence you. Will the Maria Butina plea expose what you are hiding in your clenched fist? Oh, and I have 3 words for you. January is coming. Obviously, a reference to Democrats taking over the House. But look, I mean, it's not that unusual for people to ignore letters from the minority in the House. But the NRA is going to have to answer some questions come January.
Yeah, they've been operating in secret for a very long time. And, you know, I want to hear more, absolutely. But I feel like good for them. It's almost like I want to say to them, thoughts and prayers.
Good for House.
No, to the NRA.
Really?
I'm like, thoughts and prayers to you. Yeah, I think that it's about time.
Yes. I've never felt good for the NRA in my life.
Exactly.
No, but you know, look, I think this is interesting because they've been so secretive, and they have been allowed to operate and fund. They basically gave Donald Trump millions and millions of dollars,
tens of millions.
So they're going to have to come and answer questions when the House is when the.
Well, they had a right to. They didn't violate any laws by operating in secret, by having donors that aren't disclosed to the public. But it is marked that they had a dramatic change in this election and how they started messaging it and not focusing so much on gun safety and just defeating Democrats.
All right. But again, just to add, Martina Butina had very little to do with that.
Okay,
right?
Everyone's.
So
thank you so much. Trump and Putin versus Earth. The frightening report that they chose to dismiss coming up next.
At Hilton.com, I can choose from all their different hotel brands, like a DoubleTree for my cousins, a Homewood Suites for my uncle, a Hampton for my sister and her kids, and the Waldorf Astoria Beverly Hills for me. Can I get a... Thank you. Book at Hilton.com and get the Hilton Price Match Guarantee.
I just got my Ancestry DNA results. 74% Italian. And I found out that I'm from the big toe of that sexy Italian boot. So this holiday season, it's Ancestry DNA per tutti! Order your kit now at Ancestry.com.
Having moderate to severe plaque psoriasis is not always easy. It's a long-distance journey, and you have the determination to keep going. Humira has a proven track record of being prescribed for over 10 years. Humira works inside the body to target and help block a specific source of inflammation that contributes to symptoms. Most adults taking Humira were clear or almost clear, and many saw 75% and even 90% clearance in just 4 months, and the kind of clearance that can last.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections, including tuberculosis. Serious, sometimes fatal infections and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Before treatment, get tested for TB. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Join over 250,000 patients who have chosen Humira. Ask about the #1 prescribed biologic by dermatologists. Humira and go.
Maria Ramirez?
Hi.
Maria Ramirez.
Mom! Maria!
Maria Ramirez.
McDonald's is committing $150 million in tuition assistance, education, and career advising programs.
Maria Ramirez.
To help more employees achieve their dreams.
Did you know 80% of all erectile dysfunction meds sold online are counterfeit? That's why we created Roman. Now you can get real, FDA-approved medication prescribed online, delivered to your door. Get your first month free at GetRoman.com/TV.
Here we go. Discover. I like your card, but I'm absolutely not paying an annual fee.
Discover has no annual fees.
Really?
Yeah. We just don't believe in them.
Oh, nice. You would not believe how long I've been rehearsing that.
No annual fee on any card, only from Discover.
XL guys aren't built like everyone else. That's why DXL isn't built like any other clothing store, with sizes starting at XL, from Lacoste to Levi's, Brooks Brothers, and more. Built to fit, built XL, DXL.
Hey, quick question. Do you like paying for things that you don't need?
No.
And do you want to get things you love for free?
Who wouldn't?
Exactly.
Right.
Dad, Apple Music.
He gets it. This guy gets it.
Get 6 months free Apple Music on the network you deserve.
We are rebellious,
Looking good and feeling
trendsetters,
Looking good and feeling
one of a kind.
Looking good and feeling fine.
We are what we wear. American Style, coming in January on CNN.
We believe our country is at war, a cyber war.
We believe the enemy, ransomware, is rapidly growing in sophistication and its ability to infect.
We believe the enemy is exploiting a hole in our defenses, foreign-made, obsolete, blacklist antivirus.
We believe ransomware, if left undeterred, will become a menace to our society.
We are PCmatic, the people's militia to defeat the ransomware empire.
We believe we must urgently develop and deploy advanced technologies to thwart the ransomware offensive.
Whitelist security ensures servers with business and government's critical information cannot be penetrated.
We believe effective security should be affordable, and not just for large and rich organizations.
We believe security solutions should be easy to use, install, and maintain.
We believe that we can build an army of smart and honest work-at-home employees.
We believe in our alliance of security resellers to aid businesses and government agencies.
We will defeat the enemy and win this war. Join the ransomware resistance.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
In our world lead, Saudi Arabia and Russia are not two countries that any self-respecting Western nation typically wants to find itself categorized with, but President Trump is siding with them again, this time joining with those regimes to refuse to welcome a global climate change report. The three nations, along with Kuwait, rejecting to accept the conclusion of the landmark UN climate change report, which warns that we all will see the devastating effects of climate change by 2030 unless governments around the world take immediate action. This all playing out on an international stage in Poland at a UN climate change conference, a conference to which the Trump administration decided to not send any senior officials. The U.S.'s stance is not a complete surprise, since the president told reporters last month that he didn't believe the national report from his own administration, which also warned about the dire consequences if the U.S. continues to ignore climate change. Today, the American Meteorological Society released a new report revealing extreme weather events such as last year's Hurricane Harvey and wildfires were either directly linked to or directly caused by climate change. And speaking of Saudi Arabia, in the wake of the murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi by the Saudi regime, the president's son-in-law and White House advisor Jared Kushner is coming under even more intense scrutiny for his close ties to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. The news is especially concerning to the White House after the New York Times reported that Kushner advised the Crown Prince on how to weather the storm in the aftermath of Khashoggi's murder, who, according to the CIA, the Crown Prince ordered the journalist's murder. CNN's Tom Foreman joins me now. Tom, Kushner bought the Crown Prince's pitch that he was a reformer and could help President Trump accomplish a lot in the Middle East. And now Kushner is giving advice on how he can deal with the blowback for murdering a journalist?
Yeah, and frankly, a lot of political analysts here are just amazed at the fact that he seems to be stepping closer to a political problem, not further away.
In the weeks after the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi at the hands of Saudi agents, presidential son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner had repeated conversations with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, about how to weather the storm of international outrage. This, according to the New York Times, citing a Saudi source. Furthermore, the Times says the alleged talks happened one-on-one, contrary to the normal protocol of including a National Security Council staffer. It was already known that Kushner, with National Security Advisor John Bolton, had talked to the Crown Prince once.
What kind of advice have you given MBS in this whole situation?
Just to be transparent, to be fully transparent. The world is watching. This is a very, very serious accusation. in a very serious situation.
Kushner's relations with the Crown Prince have been a cornerstone of the administration's ties to Saudi Arabia, with international affairs analysts suggesting the two young men were cultivating each other as critical allies in a volatile region.
I don't know whether he gave the order, but he certainly knew about it.
But a gathering storm of lawmakers is now demanding accountability from NBS and perhaps Kushner too.
The fact that he thought he could get away with it is in part due to the fact that he was getting a green light from Washington for reckless actions.
And more details are emerging about the gruesome death and dismemberment. The latest, CNN has heard from a source who claims to have read the transcript of an audio recording from the Saudi consulate in Turkey where it happened. He describes the journalist being confronted by someone who says, "You are coming back." Khashoggi replies, "You can't do that. People are waiting outside." Then the source says, amid scuffling, Khashoggi says repeatedly, "I can't breathe." He screams, he gasps, the noises of a saw and cutting are heard. Then a phone call, a voice saying, "The thing is done. It's done."
Initially claiming no involvement, the Saudis later admitted a team of rogue operatives had murdered Khashoggi inside the consulate. The CIA assessed in November that the Crown Prince had personally ordered the killing of the journalist. The Saudi government has denied bin Salman's involvement, but Jake, for this White House and for Jared Kushner, time is not making this better, it's only making it worse.
Although the president does seem to have made the calculation, Tom, that ultimately the public won't care all that much and they will ultimately see it